Should we do it now? I think it's time. It's time for conspiracies and madness, and you guys have got to join me. It's time to put on our tinfoil hats. You guys have got to come with me on this little journey. Let me give you guys some background. Let me get up my most recent YouTube videos so that you guys I can explain where I'm coming from here. So, a few days ago, while I was making this previous video, let me find, where's the part? So, while I was reviewing the legend rank breakdown for the first legend rank cycle, I came across this account right here, which has a Russian name, which I've subsequently found out is international in Russian. They've got a Russian flag, Russian name, and what piqued my interest at the time was the fact that they had 2 different characters at legend rank, even though only, I think 18 people in all of Europe had got legend rank. This was the only person that had legend rank in Europe with 2 different characters, and I didn't know who this was. So at the time, someone told me this was a cheater, other people told me it wasn't. We had a quick detour, and what then got me even more curious was the fact that they had a replay against Fudo. Now, if they're playing ranked matches against Fudo, that means that they're probably not actually playing from Europe. The only way that they could be Russian and playing against Fudo in ranked is if they're like as far to the east as possible. Like, maybe they're a Russian player living in Vladivostok or something. They're like the nearest part to Japan of Russia. So that's what I kind of assumed. And I watched the replay. I did a quick replay analysis just to see if there was any like obvious foul play. And long story short, we watched a match and I couldn't see anything that to me stuck out as unusual. It just looked like a high-level player. I didn't see anything particularly sketchy, nothing that would stand out as obviously a cheat. So I just kind of moved on. And that's where the story would have ended, okay? This is where I was happy to just let things lie. I assumed it was probably either a Russian player from the far east side of Russia, or perhaps it was just someone who was repping the Russian flag but lived in Asia somewhere. This was what I assumed. Now, after uploading that video, I got a really interesting comment in the replies. Let me see if where was it? I got this one kind of, this is where I started going down the rabbit hole right here from Dante, and they said that they're part of the Russian FGC and they've been in the Russian FGC for a while, and they had no idea who this was. And apparently no one that they talked to either knew who this was. They had no experience of this name. They didn't know. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So the Russian FGC has no idea who this is. So then I got even more curious, and I put out the call to action on Twitter, which was this one. I put this tweet out, and I said, I've fallen down the rabbit hole here. Does anyone know the Street Fighter 6 player with CFN International? The Russian FGC seems to have no idea, but their recent replays showed wins against Fudo. Is it a Japanese player repping Russia? Does Vladivostok have a secret Street Fighter 6 god that no one knows about? I have to know. And I got a lot of replies to this. People didn't really know who it was. But there was a couple of interesting things that came out of this. So the first thing that we found out is that this user has on their Steam profile a Chinese name. So it turns out they're probably a Chinese player, which is obviously, that's fine. That's not particularly interesting. But this is where things get complicated, because right after this, I got asked, who do they usually get matched up against? So I opened up the game, and I went onto CFN to have a look. Are they being matched up mostly against Japanese players, or Chinese players, or Russian players? Like, that's a good clue. So when I had a look at their profile, I noticed something that kind of stuck out to me. Kind of, again, got me a little bit curious. Quite a lot of the matches that this person played were ending in one and dones. You'll notice that there's quite a few one and dones in here. There's one, where is it? One here, one here. DCQ played the full set out. But I noticed while I was having a quick scroll through their match history, there was quite a few one and dones. There's another one there. And to me, if someone's getting one and done constantly, there's probably 2 likely conclusions from this, okay? Number 1, they have a bad connection, and everyone's just like, I don't want to play against this person, it was super laggy. That's probably the most likely outcome. Number 2, this person's gameplay is suspicious, and people are not rematching because they think there's maybe foul play happening. So I got a bit more curious, and I added a bunch of replays from this player to I saved them to my local profile, because I thought maybe I cut out the possibility that the international was cheating when I looked at the initial replay, but I went back in for a closer look, and you can see that this is how far I've fallen down the rabbit hole. Look at my replay history. So I'm going to show you guys this replay. This is the first one that I looked at. This is where the deep dive started getting even more insane. I want you guys to watch this replay with me and tell me if there's anything to you guys that strikes you as potentially suspicious. I think this is quite subtle, but this is where I started to develop the possibility that this player might be using cheats. So we've got a mirror match of Luke versus Luke.
All right, you ready? Let me have some fun. Round one. Fight.
Playing Luke, he's already a cheater? Correct. Good spot. Okay, that's the first round. We got one more.
Not bad.
Round two. Fight.
Where you going?
And there we go. So, what do you guys think? Alright, I'm glad I'm not the only person who's going crazy here. I'm glad I'm bringing you guys along with me here. Chat, you're on my wavelength now. I realized at the end of this match that every single forward jump that this Luke player did was almost exactly perfectly timed to the startup of a fireball. I had this exact same connection to you as you guys. The rest of the gameplay looked reasonably normal, but the jumps had me suspicious. But one match isn't enough to confirm that. You know, if you get a couple of good jumps in a match, that could just be like good luck. I could have a match like that, but that's now I'm actually thinking about it. Now I'm actually looking out for it. So now I'm actually paying attention to the jumps. So I get a bunch more replay. You got another Luke mirror. Street Fighter 6 personified. That's interesting. This is the very first jump he's done of the entire match. That's interesting. Game 2. The moment the fireball came out, he jumped it. That's the first time he's jumped the entire set. Okay, let's give it some thumbs up. Maybe this could still be the thing about cheats is that you can't really usually detect them if they're relatively subtle from one replay. You have to start looking at a few and then start realizing. Yeah, that's another good thing to point out. The jumps inputs are also very suspect themselves as well. I'll point that out next time it happens as well. Because the thing is, the moment-to-moment gameplay like this looks fairly normal to me. This looks like normal Luke gameplay. This is why it passed for real to me the first time. Maybe he is just really good at predicting fireballs, but you'll notice two things. I'll show you next time it happens as well. And there we go. You see it? Once again. The moment the fireball comes out, up forward, within about 3 frames of fireball startup. And again, what's worth mentioning here, so as well as the jumps being very suspicious, what's also worth mentioning, if you look at the top left-hand corner of the screen, every time they jump, they always transition from a back or a down back into up forward with no intermediate input. You see it goes from back to up forward. There's no other cardinal. There's no direction in between, which is possible. Again, that in isolation is not proof of anything, because like hitbox players can do that. Hitbox players can go from down back to up forward in 1 frame. It could be a hitbox player, but I'm saying that all of these little things start to add up the more you study it. I think it's also worth mentioning that as well as having a 100% rate of jumping fireballs, what's interesting to me is also the fact that they're not jumping at any other time. So for example, if a player was jumping 24/7, you would expect them to also jump most fireballs. If they're a very up forward heavy player, you would expect them to also jump the fireball. But this player is never jumping ever in neutral except when the fireball comes out. So it's not just the fact that they're jumping the fireballs, it's the fact that they're only jumping the fireballs. The thing is, for me, I like to be sure. I don't like going around sending out accusations if I don't have a good basis for it. So I went through a bunch of these. Let's just do one more for final confirmation. Why only against Luke though? I just saved any replay where the opponent has a traditional fireball because that would be the easiest to test my theory on. So I saved mostly like Luke and Ken. But look, right again. No jumps so far in this match. No jumps up until this point. It's all grounded and then jump. Just completely stationary in neutral, and then the moment the fireball happens, he jumps. So at this point, I'm willing to say with pretty high confidence that this player is cheating. Yeah, they also went from down to up forward in 1 frame. I think that the actual amount of frames before the jump comes out varies a little bit. I think it seems to be sort of anything from 1 to 4 frames after the fireball is inputted, from what I could tell. And again, add another one for your list. The evidence is becoming incontrovertible at this point. Let's pause that there. So the reason that I think this is a noteworthy cheater is because this player, I think, underneath the cheats, is probably a decent player. Based on the things that I've seen outside of the auto jumps, I think this player might actually be like a master rank level player. Maybe low master, maybe like just 1500 MR or something, just barely in master. But this kind of freaked me out because I realized if a really good player starts cheating in this game and using like a subtle auto jump or a subtle DI cheat, it gets really hard to spot them unless you start studying a lot of replays. I gave this person a free pass. I saw one match against Fudo and it looked completely normal. And I went, okay, they're probably not cheating. I had to go through about like 10 replays before I was certain and I started noticing a pattern of the jump timings. You can still spot it, but the better the player is, the harder it becomes to spot patterns. And with the CPT becoming more and more focused on online, this could really become a problem down the line. If a good enough player used the cheat that's set to auto jump when it detects fireball startup, and they were a bit more subtle about it, you would have no way of really proving it. The reason this guy got caught is because he got greedy. Like, the problem with most of the cheaters I've seen in Street Fighter 6 is they get greedy. They set it so that, like, if the game detects a fireball startup, it will up forward every time. So that's what this guy's got, basically. Sorry, every time it detects a fireball, it just up forwards. If a really good player decided to use this cheat, but just turn the dial down a little bit from, say, 100% success rate to, like, I don't know, 70% success rate, no one would be able to spot it. No one would be able to tell. They would just be told, you have good jump timings. And they could potentially, you know, win a tournament, or they could be a candidate for $2 million. There's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of incentive that could attract unscrupulous players. So I think we actually need to be quite concerned about the future of this game's competitive integrity. This player has kind of made me realize that Street Fighter 6 might have more of a cheating problem than I first thought of. Because the thing is, the last time on stream, I looked through a cheater's replays. It was a really stupid cheater. It was like the laziest form of cheater possible. It was a Zangief player that had their cheats turned on that was just set to auto perfect parry everything. Like, you could tell within 5 seconds they were cheating. They were just walking forward and then perfect parrying everything on reaction. That's easy to spot. This was a lot harder to spot. This took several replays and a lot of pattern matching to figure out. So I guess that's where I got up to. I started out thinking, I wonder who this player is, and I ended up thinking, okay, Street Fighter 6 might seriously have a problem in future with cheating in tournaments. That's how I fell down this rabbit hole, and I'm glad you guys are now with me. We're now on the same wavelength.